Welcome, everyone. I think we'll get ready. Thank you for being here. It is council meeting number 59. It's Tuesday, December 5th at 6:30, and we are convening in Suite A here at the Municipality of North Grenville. Thank you to our intrepid tech team for supporting this meeting from an audiovisual perspective. Much appreciated. And I'd like to welcome you all to December. We've just had our first snow day, which I'm sure was lots of fun for some of the kids and difficult for the parents who were working and parenting, but nice to see that winter is here. There have been many, many craft markets, and in my e-news last week, we tried to highlight just a small number of them. And I believe Councillor Strachan, even though the Jack Frost Fair was postponed due to weather on Sunday, is it scheduled to start to? Okay, so that will happen this coming Sunday. Of course, the Jack Frost Fair is the Campbell Farmers Market winter events. So we appreciate that there's still quite a few markets to go before the holidays upon us. I'd also just briefly like to highlight that council was able to join our local volunteer firefighters for their annual gala. In fact, I think right in this room on Saturday evening. And as part of that ceremony, we recognized Chief John Oakham for 35 years of service and presented him with a pin from the Provincial Fire Marshal's Office. So 35 years in the municipal sector is a lot in this day and age, and we understand how hard Chief Oakham has worked. Certainly in partnership with his deputy chief, Randy Urslack, to ensure that fire safety, fire prevention, and fire response is well in hand in North Grenville. So very grateful. And finally, just very quickly, our civic awards are now open. And we, of course, encourage anyone to nominate an outstanding individual or a group to be considered for our 2023 Civic Awards. You can find all the information on the website, and the deadline is in January. So if you have a little bit of time over the holidays and are reflecting on the good work in North Grenville, of which there is much, then really consider putting a nomination in the system. As council, we really always appreciate reading them and really understanding and hearing directly from residents on the impact people are having. Some of it is quiet and some of it is more prominent, but regardless, it should be celebrated. So really encourage you to do that. So with that, council colleagues, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'll look for a council colleague to read the land acknowledgement. I should note that Councillor Doreen O'Sullivan is not with us this evening. She is traveling, and we look forward to welcoming her back soon. Any volunteers for a land acknowledgement? Deputy Mayor? Oh, or Councillor Wilson, go ahead. Nope, we're good. Fire away.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe. We honor the historic relationship of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat peoples to this land. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with all Indigenous peoples, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and fostering the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We'll now move to the approval of the agenda, and that is the council agenda for December 5th, 2023, be approved as presented. Can I get a mover?
I'd like to suggest an amendment.
Yes, yes, let's get the motion on the table. Deputy Mayor Barclay, you'll move. Council colleague, thank you. Councillor Strachan, you'll second, and I'll recognize Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
At your discretion, I'm wondering if you could move the Public Works Report, A8, up earlier in the agenda.
Oh, you
Sorry,
need to
yeah,
be...
I'm sorry. Thank you, Neil. Yeah, at your discretion, I wonder if we can move the order of the reports to have Public Works first, out of deference to Mr. Thompson, who's here to hear the report, and possibly, again, at your discretion, whether he could ask questions at the end of the report.
I'm certainly amenable to that. Other council colleagues? Okay. So we'll reorder that presentation so that it appears as first under Public Works.
Or do you want it earlier in the agenda? After the delegation?
Certainly, we can do that. Is that your request, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, if we move it to the top of the reports? The public
Yes.
reports should be first.
Right. Okay. So we'll honor the order, but under Public Works, we will put that report first, under Section K. That's what I'm hearing is a request? Okay. All right. So that is done. Is there any other comments on the agenda, colleagues? Not seeing any, I will then call the question. All in favor, please. All right, that carries. All right, no closed session for this meeting. I'll just ask for disclosures of interest. Any disclosures of interest, colleagues? Not seeing any. Then we'll move on. We are here this evening. I think, Rachel, you're with us? Do we have Rachel Burns with us?
Yep, she's over second row.
Oh, great. Okay, welcome. Come on up. Thank you. My glasses allow me to see up close, but not far away, so I apologize. I didn't see you behind Jen. Welcome. Thank you. All right, and you're going to present on RNJ Youth. Yeah. Thank you. And your mic, please. You just have to put your mic on. There you go.
Good? Yeah? Okay. So yeah, my name is Rachel Burns, and I'm the Executive Director at RNJ Youth Services. Might be familiar to some of you from a couple weeks ago, but here we are again. So as an agency, we are working hard to try to bring some awareness to RNJ Youth Services and the work that we're doing in the communities across Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville. Can we move to the next slide? So RNJ provides a variety of different services for youth across the counties of Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville, like I mentioned. And we have been doing so since about since 1987. We currently, receive the majority of our funding from the provincial government, but as you will see in a later slide, we have not received a funding increase in 17 years. Everybody's aware of the general rise in costs. That includes everything from our insurance to our benefits to everything, supplies, groceries, all of that kind of stuff. So like I said, we've went back to the ministry a few times, and their recommendation is that we look elsewhere, basically. So like I said, our goal is to just try to create some awareness so folks are aware of the different programs and services. So we'll move to the next slide. So here are some statistics of the number of youth served in the last 2 fiscal years. And these are, like I said, across the county. So in the municipality of North Grenville, we've served 148 individual, unique youth. So that's not counting ones that have come back multiple times. That's not counting the number of youth we've served through just sort of pop-up events that the numbers aren't tracked through, or we've done a variety of, one-off presentations at a school assembly, for example. But that's just a brief summary of the number that we've served. So
Can I ask, thank you, and I remember this in the community grants presentation, those youth get on your radar screen how?
So they,
Here in North Grenville, how would those youth come into interaction with your organization?
they primarily come either from the police or the schools. It depends on the program in which they're coming through, but primarily those are the two referral sources. If we can move to the next slides, these ones will be very brief. So these are just a summary of the programs that we offer. One program that's really at jeopardy is our Intersections program. That program is for youth that the police deal with, where they know something needs to happen, but they don't know exactly what it is. So for that program, we work a lot. We work very closely with the MCERT teams. So as everybody's aware, MCERT is overwhelmed and swamped and super busy. And it's more for adults, but they are still responding to those calls of people under the age of 18. It's not saying that something doesn't need to happen with those people, but MCERT's not necessarily they don't have the resources or the capacity to be able to do that. So MCERT responds to the initial call, and then we tend to do a lot of the follow-up pieces. So maybe they make the primary referral to CHEO, for example, and then we do that hand-holding, get the family to CHEO, help the family understand the assessment, and get them connected with the appropriate services in their local communities. So next slide. So these programs, the extrajudicial measures, extrajudicial sanctions, those are referrals that come from the police and or the Crown Attorney. So they're for individuals that have been charged, they're justice involved. And same as the next slide, which is our Youth Mental Health Court Support Program. So that's where a lot of those referrals that I talked about coming from the police, they all fall in those categories. Our next couple programs also run solely on grants and different donations that we're able to achieve. So our Connections program, I wish that I could say that it is readily available to the residents of North Grenville. Unfortunately, it's not because of transportation issues. The residents of North Grenville would benefit, the students, sorry, I should say that the youth of North Grenville would benefit, some of them, but we don't have transportation, and paying to get one individual from Kemptville to Brockville is complicated. And the same as our next slide, the after-school program at Stingers. For a while, we did have a bus that picked kids up here and in Prescott and brought them to the Stingers after-school program, but that, again, the funding dried up for that. But we did this summer do a pop-up event here in the municipality that Stingers helped put on. I think they did like a pop-up tent with paintball and things like that for the kids. So some of the trends that we're seeing is increased caseloads. We've actually received a dramatic amount of referrals this year. We're well over 900 referrals, which is putting us back to pre-pandemic numbers. So I think we're on the other end of that, which isn't good, because along with the increased caseloads comes increased complexity with the individuals. We have less volunteers, less opportunities for programs, increased wait lists, lack of services, everything that everybody's already very well aware of. I think we're just starting to really feel the effects now in the justice side of things. Like, for example, lack of primary physicians. Never used to really be much of a problem, but now the majority of the kids that we're supporting don't have a family doctor, which means they then can't, get a medication review, for example. They can't get their medication refilled because their doctor's retired. Now they're awaiting a new doctor. It's just all, in the justice sector, we haven't really been, we haven't felt that effect too much, but post-pandemic, we're really feeling those effects. So this is just a graph to show you the increase in referrals. You can see the steady climb. This year, we're over the 900 mark, and it's only December. Our fiscal year goes to March 31st. So I would have to think we're probably going to end up being closer to 1,000 youth. And I think it's important to note that, myself excluded, there's only 10 staff that support those 1,000 youth across Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville, which, as you are all very well aware, it's a huge, huge geographical area. So as I mentioned before, our primary sources of funding come from the government, but this fiscal year we're sitting at a deficit of about $210,000. Like I said, all of our expenses have just skyrocketed, and our funding has not, which is generally is concerning, because I know next year it's just going to be worse. We already got notice that our rent in one of our locations is going to go up by 25%. And I know that our funding is not going to go up by 25%, so that's very concerning. So that's just a list of our different funding sources. So MCCSS, the Ministry of Community and Social Services, the Ministry of the Attorney General, we get funding. We operate a partnership program with Lanark Leeds and Grenville Addictions and Mental Health. We get funding from the United Way, community donations, community grants, donations, and the Sifton Foundation funds our Stingers After School program. So I think we can just skip right to the how you can help piece. So really what we're looking to do, like I said, is raise awareness, do some advocacy work, because that's what we're hearing from our primary funders that we have to do. We have to look elsewhere. Promote volunteers. Our Stingers After School program, we would like to be able to expand that and offer it, hybrids in different locations, but we simply don't have enough volunteers to do that. And things like, even little things that people might think are minor, like use of space, for example. It's when we're meeting young people in their communities, which we always aim to do. We don't have an office here in Kemptville, for example. And if, we're trying to meet kids after school, there's not a lot of places available to meet with them after 4 o'clock, for example. So even small things, like nothing is too minor in terms of support and help. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions, colleagues? My question is how sustained are those interactions? So, the 175-ish kids that have been referred to you by the OPP or the high schools, how long would you be interacting with those kids based upon their history and how their needs present to you?
So it varies. It's very individual. Our gold standard is for clients to be in and out within 6 months. Now, again, that is going to depend. If the wait list at a service is longer than 6 months, then we stay connected with the client for as long as it takes for them to get connected to the most appropriate resource. And we stick with them to make sure that that is the most appropriate resource. It's not like we're making a referral somewhere and saying, good luck, I hope this works out for you. We want to make sure that it does work out for them, and overall they're feeling better and they're feeling more supported, and their family's feeling that way too. So gold standard is 6 months.
Do you tend to work with generally supportive families, or it would depend?
It depends.
Okay.
It really depends. I mean, some kids we work with don't have anybody. So we're working with other community supports like Family and Children's Services, for example, but it depends on the situation.
And if schools and the OPP weren't calling you, who would they call? Who else works in this realm?
So we are the only agency in Leeds and Grenville that provides those early intervention justice supports to justice-involved youth. I mean, they may call a service like Children's Mental Health, for example, and try to get them connected that way. But I think what we had seen historically is, like, the police, for example, would respond to a call. They'd give the parent a flyer saying, hey, call this number. Maybe it's Children's Mental Health. They don't call, right? Or they do, and then while they're waiting to get picked up by somebody, maybe the young person's behavior changes a little bit, and you, as a parent, you think, oh, everything's fine, they don't need that support, and then they do again, and then it's this sort of vicious cycle, right?
So when you get the referral, do you reach out?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So the OPP, local schools flagging it, you get information and you make contact?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are most kids/youth receptive to the contact?
I would say 95% of them, yeah. Yeah.
And what's the first step in that support? Or does it depend?
The first step is always having a conversation with the young person and figuring out what they want, setting some goals. And all of the programs are always very client-led. So what we may sit down and have a conversation with the young person and think, okay, they need A, B, C, but they want, X, Y, and Z. So you have to work with them and meet them where they're at. and really focus on their goals that they set for themselves and help them to achieve those.
And how much of your funding comes from the Ministry of the Attorney General?
$30,000 of our total operating cost, so
Wow.
very little.
And the kind of early intervention, youth-oriented initiatives, such as the ones you provide, are not better funded through the Ministry of the Attorney General? Historically, were they better funded?
No, so all of our early intervention programs are funded by the Ministry of Community and Social Services, MCCSS.
Gotcha.
And I just did the numbers the other day, don't quote me, but I think it's about 61% of the funding
I see.
comes from MCCSS. They fund the early intervention programming.
Okay,
The
so you have
minis-
two ministries involved?
We
then?
do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then the remainder is through a combination of other granting agencies?
granting and, donations and stuff like that, yeah.
And with more support, would you expect to have a more sustained presence in North Grenville?
That's our goal. Our goal is to enhance that early intervention programming so that, we don't have as many justice-involved youth. Our early intervention program is our busiest program, so our intersections program, the program that unfortunately is at risk. It's a pilot program. Don't know whether or not it's going to continue to be funded, which is concerning because that program serves well over 150 youth a year across the Tri-County region. But our goal is to put more focus on that program, try to prevent young people from having contact with the police, which we all know that there's a ripple effect, right? It's just an increase in housing costs and all of that kind of stuff because family breakdown, and I could go on, but yeah.
Okay,
That's the goal.
okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Barkley?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, thank you. I have two questions for Rachel. First of all, thanks for the presentation. And what would a volunteer do? You've got the floor here now, and you're looking for volunteers. What kind of things would a volunteer be involved with or could be involved with?
So we use volunteers in a variety of capacities. One of the biggest areas that we use our volunteers is our restorative justice program, so the Youth Justice Committee. So we train community volunteers to help facilitate those conversations, those restorative conversations. Right now, we only have about 12 active volunteers across Leeds and Grenville. And we can always use more. That is our biggest need for volunteers is those trained community volunteers that can help facilitate those conversations. So what happens is the volunteers go through a training process, and then they facilitate that restorative conversation. So we bring together the offender and the victim, and together they work out amends for whatever has happened.
So you only have 12 volunteers that are trained to do that? Any in North Grenville that you're aware of?
Less than 5?
Okay. Second question is, the courthouse has one unit, one apartment available for transitional youth. Are you one of the agencies that feed into that, or can you avail of that opportunity for youth in transition to have 3 weeks in one of those apartments?
So I am aware that it's
Yeah.
available, and we do provide support to those individuals that may be accessing that. In terms of space, we don't necessarily use it very often, but we are aware and we can provide and do provide support to the individuals accessing that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues? Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your work. Where are you based?
Brockville.
You're in Brockville. Well, thank you for making the drive on a snowy evening. We appreciate it.
Thank
It was
you.
great to learn more. Yeah, Councilor Strachan?
Sorry, I was just trying to gather my thoughts on a few of these things. Obviously, the work that you're doing is very much needed in the community. I mean, the numbers for North Grenville alone are significant. I know that Victim Services Leeds Grenville does use the library as a space to be able to meet. The library is not open every evening, but it does have some hours that would coincide with after-school hours. So whether or not there's an opportunity there, because they also have a segregated quiet space
Yeah.
as well that may be a potential. And I think as North Grenville is growing and there's other community and recreation sort of facilities, I think maybe there's an opportunity to set something up that would be akin to what is offered at Stingers and would be within our community, so that connections within the
Yep.
community here wouldn't be limited by transportation, and hopefully with our own public transit system would also enable that as well. So hopefully there'd be more opportunities available here to help
Yeah.
facilitate some of the programming that you're doing. So I appreciate you coming here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again. We'll be in touch. Thank you. Okay, council colleagues, we're going to move on to the proposed consent agenda. As we know, items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine or no longer required for further discussion and are enacted in one motion. Does any colleague wish to remove an item from the consent agenda to be voted on separately? Deputy Mayor Barkley?
Yes, I'd like to remove the final item, the resolution from Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, just for information, more context.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else, council colleagues? Seeing none, I will ask for a mover and a seconder for our amended consent agenda. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Councillor Stracan. And I will call the question on that. All in favor? Good. Okay, that carries. Minutes of previous meetings, we have none. And then K, under reports, we will move up the single item under Public Works, which is the O'Neill Road resurfacing petition. And I believe we have a member of staff speaking to that this evening. Is that Mr. Finley? Okay, thank you. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No problem.
So the report we do have in front of council tonight is in response to a petition that was provided to council, and direction was sought to further evaluate the request to hard surface O'Neill Road. It is more to the east, Crozier Road, which splits between Rock Road and Patterson's Corners, which is a bit more in the west, and then the final portion of O'Neill Road between Patterson's Corners Road and McDonald Road. It is an unposted 80-kilometer speed limit and a gravel surface road currently at the moment. Next slide, please. So a bit of background. In September, the petition was received by council, and subsequently council did direct staff to investigate the options of hard surfacing the road. We do look at a number of factors when we are evaluating the roads, such as the road condition, the classification, operational constraints, traffic volume, and different items like that. We do have a road needs study that is completed every 5 years. The last one was completed in 2021, and also provides condition ratings of the roads within the municipality. It is a bit of a snapshot in time, but gives us at least a benchmark to move forward with in some of our evaluations. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned, part of the evaluation, it is an unposted 80-kilometer-per-hour road. During the 2021 road needs study, it was evaluated with a good evaluation, with a PCI index ranging in the 60s. This is, again, a bit of a snapshot in time at the condition of the road when it was being evaluated. We did look at some budget estimates if the project were to move forward, be brought forward as going to a hard surface, which would total, if all 3 sections of the road were done, just over $1 million. I do note this is a bit of a 3-year process, as when we are hard surfacing a road, first we do a gravel rebuild, then we do a surface treatment, put that hard surface on, and then the 3rd year is a slurry seal to kind of protect that surface treatment. So in total, at kind of today's costs, we're looking at $1 million, but that would be over a 3-year period. Next slide, please. So we noticed in our analysis, in the road needs study, it was estimated within the next 6 to 10 years that resurfacing would would be required. From an operational perspective, we do see, based on our work plan and moving forward with our work plan, that we could potentially start some of that resurfacing, which would be the gravel rebuild portion, by 2026. Again, this would be subject to yearly council budget approvals. We did note 2 speed assessments were completed between Patterson's Corners and Rock Road, and also between Crozier Road and Rock Road. The section between Crozier Road and Rock Road did indicate a little bit higher priority. There was a bit more traffic there. I believe the average annual daily traffic count was about 118 vehicles, whereas the speed assessment between Crozier and Patterson's Corners Road was a little bit lower, just under 100 vehicles per day. We do note when evaluating roads for resurfacing or upgrading roads to a higher level of surface, from a provincial standard, anything lower than around 300 to 400 or less of vehicles today do not actually meet the criteria for an upgrade. However, staff do acknowledge the desire for many of our more local roads to have that increased road surface. So we do, in our work plan, take that into consideration in upgrading roads on a yearly basis. Next slide, please. So a few of the items that we mentioned, it is rated in the good rating. We do continue with gravel maintenance to meet minimum maintenance standards on O'Neill Road. It is done at an ad hoc basis, just depending on the condition of the road when it's being monitored through operational staff. And we do look at a couple complaints regarding dust, which were rectified as needed following the complaints. Next slide, please. So at this point, it is staff's position that we continue with our current work plan. We do acknowledge that O'Neill Road could be moved to resurfacing as early as 2026 under the current work plan, provided annual budgets are approved by council. And again, our work plan continues as we're setting forth. So that we do acknowledge that it isn't today that we're looking to resurface the road, but in the near future, it is an option that we are looking to explore. And that is my conclusion, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, council colleagues? Yes, Deputy Mayor Barclay.
Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Finley. So we have a wish list, basically, and you're suggesting that O'Neill now ranks 6th on that list. I've had some residents share with me the fact that, previously they've inquired about road resurfacing and paving on gravel roads, and they've been given a year, and subsequently that date gets revised later. Is that primarily due to budget considerations, or does the road magically get better?
Through you, Madam Mayor. There's a number of factors that can change that date. Yeah. Definitely, as we set through the roads needs study a priority list. Again, it is a snapshot in time where even through general maintenance, we can improve some of those roads that they don't need further attention. So it is a mixture of operational items or change of use of a road, potentially different developments come through, or different changes in driver habits. More traffic requires changes our priorities as we kind of evaluate them. So they can change. We typically have a standard work plan and then evaluate from that point.
Another question, if I might? Yes. Yeah. O'Neill Road, would we ever repair a section of it and not the whole road? I mean, the gravel rebuild, would we only rebuild a portion of it?
So through you, Madam Mayor, typically that's what we would look at, especially with this road, the 3 different sections that we had would be evaluated as needed for that road rebuild. We do acknowledge that the section more westerly between Patterson's Corners and McDonald is used far less than the other 2 sections of the road, and in fact, east moving west, the traffic slowly diminishes. Again, through our traffic counts, we are over approximately 118 vehicles on an average day between the most easterly section and 92, I believe it was, in the middle section. So there is potential to rebuild section by section. Again, we do take into consideration if there's operational limitations to doing that, so potentially do those first 2 sections that are more easterly and reevaluate the most westerly section at a future date. The petition came for the entire road, so that's what was looked at, but we would look at section by section if required.
So just to clarify, what section, or is it in the entire road, that the earliest possible date that it would see some attention was 2026? Was that specifically one section, or?
When we were looking through you, Madam Mayor, when we were looking through those sections, we would start with the 2 sections that are more easterly, so between Rock Road to Crozier, and would most likely, pending budgets, of course, do the whole section to Patterson's Corners. We probably would not move from Patterson's Corners to McDonald during that 2026 period.
So that would be the earliest 2026, and that would be gravel rebuild. And would it naturally follow in step? The second year would be the hard surfacing, and then the third year the slurry seal, or would there be gaps in time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically to have that road properly maintained, it would follow that 3-year process. Okay. Once it gets into that rebuild, again, it's budget approved, of course. But yes, the next step is to surface treat and then seal it into subsequent years. So it would be a 3-year process once started. Typically, we don't look for gaps because that runs a greater risk of damaging that process and having to rebuild a section or parts of it potentially later on.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finlay. How many kilometers is O'Neill Road, and how?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I apologize. I'll have to find it back in the report. My internet's not working the greatest.
Why don't you move on to your next question?
And the next question would be, how do we assess who would be in line at the top of the chain as to who would get paving of roads or road rehabilitation? Is it based on the number of residents that are on the road, or is it the number of cars that travel per day?
So through you, Madam Mayor, it's a combination of all those pieces. We start with the roads needs study, which starts to lay out a priority list, and then we take that list, try to develop through which roads we know can be maintained through maintenance gravel, potentially lower traffic loads that don't require full rebuild. So a lot of the list we see potentially are some of the smaller roads, very low traffic counts. They potentially don't need hard servicing or don't require it based on our provincial guidelines. So we take those factors as well as our operational factors. So we look at where graders are moving. If roads are similar in nature and in design, if we hard surface certain ones, that'll limit the travel of that grader, so we can focus on other areas where there's more gravel roads. So it's a bit of a combination how we evaluate that and determine, and also what's in the surrounding area. So that are these roads coming off collector county roads or different items like that, or are they
if
more
they're
local?
through roads?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So, Deputy Mayor Barclay, I know you said there's a resident here do you have any questions? Actually, yes, I do, actually. Okay. Would you mind coming and addressing us? Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, just from a time perspective, asking your questions all at once, and then we can kind of figure out how to manage them, and we'll go from there. And if you could identify yourself, please.
I'm Evan Thompson, actually, from 1661 O'Neill Road, just representing the residents.
Yep.
Actually, I just have a few questions, obviously, with the concerns you have, or your stuff. I know, obviously, Crozier Road was done years ago, and the same cars come down Crozier Road and hit O'Neill Road. If Crozier Road met the criteria, I don't know how O'Neill doesn't.
So why don't you put all your questions on the table,
That's-
and then we
okay,
can certainly
sorry.
facilitate
Very
a
good.
future discussion
Sure.
with Mr. Finley, but
And
he'll
if we
do his
want to do it
best.
afterwards too, that's all.
Yes, indeed.
So that's one of the questions.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's several other roads that have been done, which you said about the low volume, they weren't necessarily being done. I'm questioning Haskins Road, Arcan Road, Visiting Road, Sanderson Road, and actually Scotch Line, which are a lot of them are just, they're just traveled by the local people. Where O'Neill Road, obviously it's a connector from, everybody coming from the east comes up O'Neill Road to the dump. That's really what really drives that part, and I understand the traffic obviously is higher to the east, there's no doubt in my mind, I've lived here all my life, I think longer than you, actually. So anyway, that's my real questions on all those other roads, are they met all those criteria? And one more question, but I gotta ask, in your thing, it says here, traffic volume, operational constraints, and road superintendent's considerations. That's like a personal choice here now. If everything is followed, to me, by criteria, how do you have an input of a person? That's my question also. Because that doesn't seem to add up to me. If somebody has personal choice, I'll just not do that today. I don't like that one. Because that doesn't make sense to me, that one there. And then another thing too, just about the traffic count, I noticed on November the 15th to the 17th, time in and time out of that traffic time is only like maybe 2 days. And whenever I got a response back from Ryan,
Yep.
is it
Ryan Bro. Yep.
Very nice man. He responded to that he would, collecting data for a longer duration to ensure that the typical day is captured. If 2 days is a extended long period of time, I'd hate to see a short one. So that was one of the questions I had with that actually too, is I really don't understand some of this stuff. And we can do this afterwards too, I don't mind sitting down with you, and with Councillor Barkley too, obviously everybody's busy here, so.
Well, we wanted to give you the opportunity to put your questions on the
by all
public
means.
record.
I really
so,
appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you for coming, and maybe, Mr. Finley, I don't know if you have a general comment. I don't think we're looking for debate this evening, but certainly, I think a facilitated discussion after the fact with Deputy Mayor and yourself and Mr. Finley may be welcome once you've had a chance to digest some of the questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Finley, at this stage?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So through you, unfortunately for the number of roads that were mentioned, I wasn't part of those evaluations, but I'm sure we can try and look back and find that information. I wouldn't have it in front of me today. In response to the road supervisor, what we look at there, and again, it ties in back with the operational constraints, because there is a bit of some thought process, and again, as we mentioned, where our equipment is heading, is there a way to optimize by hard surfacing certain roads so we remove the grader aspect of that and it can focus on other locations? So that all kind of factors in together as one of the items we look at. And again, unfortunately, in terms of the longer duration comment that was made, I'd have to follow back and see what we looked at from an operation side of it before I can comment on that one a little further.
Okay, excellent. So I'm sure more discussion will ensue, but we really appreciate you being here. Thank you. I know this
appreciate you.
road is of great significance to you. Obviously, you've lived there a long time, so hopefully we can bring some clarity.
I really appreciate your time, thank you very
No
much.
problem. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for coming. Oh, and I will invite Councillor Strachan to add, and other council colleagues to add any final remarks.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a question for Mr. Finley. So O'Neill is ranked 6th. Do you know what the top 5 actually are, just for some context for comparison?
So through you, Madam Mayor, The list we have right now is more into the, I guess, southeasterly portion, so we're looking at finishing off a section of Town Line Road. There'll be Hess Road there, Edward Scott. There's Norton, and Slater, thank you. and that was going to, not at this time, but those were the 5 that were there. And again, they're more located in that southeasterly area of the municipality.
And is that, those 5 roads, is that a dynamic list, if you will? So those top 5 that you named, are they in play now in terms of road improvements, or they're sort of poised to go next, or it is very much budget dependent, I presume?
Yes, it is budget dependent, and over the next, we'll present the first couple, this for 2024's budget, and subsequent into 2025 and potentially with 2026, depending on where that fits in with O'Neill Road.
And that commuter aspect where someone's using a road, right, to facilitate or to expedite other kinds of connectivity, right, into the community, is that considered when you look at these roads? I mean, I know it's traffic volumes in part, but not exclusively. If the road sort of has more of a regional function, if you will, versus highly localized, is that part of the consideration for prioritization?
That is correct, Madam Mayor. It is one of the aspects that is also considered is it more of a local road or more of a commuter road? Does take part of the considerations.
So when it comes to O'Neill Road, that sort of dimension of how it's used is recognized in your own calculations?
That is correct. We do look at it. We did acknowledge again through the traffic counts that it does appear that traffic is coming through up to O'Neill and must be turning onto Crozier because the counts were significant lower past Crozier. Gotcha. So residents are using that access road. Okay,
thank you. Well, I'm optimistic. More conversation will ensue, so thank you again. And colleagues, I think we'll move on at the present time. Okay. So we're going to go back to, I think, our... Oh, I apologize. There is a resolution, and I will look, colleagues, for a mover and a seconder to both receive the report in regards to O'Neill Road resurfacing, the petition itself, and direct staff to continue with the dialogue and investigation into O'Neill Road and, of course, other priorities that were articulated this evening. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? All right. So we have Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wilson. Thank you. All right, and I'm going to call a question on that. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on here, colleagues. We don't have minutes from previous meetings. We do have a report from Corporate Services, and that's in regards to an updated land acknowledgement. And I believe, Ms. Janot, you're here to do that. Thank you.
So good evening, Council. This is my first of 3 presentations tonight, so bear with me here. This first one, as Mayor Peckford said, is about updating our land acknowledgement. Next slide, please. The municipality adopted its original land acknowledgement in February 2022 following consultation with the public and Indigenous advisory firm First Peoples Group. Council also established the Indigenous Advisory Circle a year later. The IAC, for short, has reviewed the land acknowledgement and provided some suggested changes. Next slide, please. So the updated land acknowledgement is on the slide there, and it reads, the municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation. IAC member Lorraine Reckmans, who I don't think is here, did provide a message as well, and that was attached to the report, speaking to the reasoning for changing the land acknowledgement. The Circle members have suggested that the land acknowledgement should be used to begin all municipal meetings and events, and that it should be the first item ahead of all other introductions. The organizer should first invite any Indigenous community members to provide the opening. In the absence of an Indigenous community member, the organizer can read the land acknowledgement. The first sentence, as shown on the slide, should be read as is, but the second part should be up to the speaker to decide what they feel they should say. A guide has been created and attached to this report that will provide staff guidance. So there are no members of the IEC here tonight, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any comments at this stage? I think, Ms. Janot, we understand that the considerations around the updated land acknowledgement were deliberate and quite careful, and from other dialogue we've been having, it appears that the amended land acknowledgement is in line with the sentiments of others within the community. So if there are no comments on that piece, I think we'd like to thank yourself and Ms. Reckman for also providing guidance on how to utilize the land acknowledgement so we do it well and we do it right. So that's that contribution is certainly appreciated. Colleagues, if there is nothing, then I will move that, or ask that we move that we adopt the updated land acknowledgement as read, and we utilize the updated land acknowledgement to begin on municipal meetings and events. I think that's a protocol that we have instituted, Ms. Janot, so I don't know if there's further context for that particular piece of the recommendation.
Through your worship. So it currently only is mandated to use at council meetings. Some advisory circles have asked to use it. For example, the IEC, a member usually does an opening. They don't do a land acknowledgement, but they give an opening. And I think some other advisory committees have started to use it themselves on their own accord. But we will also add that to all advisory committee agendas moving forward, and any events we hold, the event runner will be expected to use it.
So I think we have control over municipally convened events, correct? So this is specific to municipally convened events?
Correct.
Okay. Colleagues, any comments on that aspect of the recommendation this evening? Okay. So can I have a mover, please? Councillor Strachan, Deputy Mayor? I see no comments, so I'm calling the vote. All in favor, please. Good. All right, that carries. We look forward to thanking the IEC members personally for their work. We're going to move on to communities. Do we have an issue, AV? We're good?
Yeah, we don't have
We can't see the screen. Okay, we've lost our screen in the front. I think while that's being resolved, do you have a presentation for Communities in Bloom? It's available on all of our laptops. So can I ask Ms. Janot to carry on while we sort it out? Okay. All right, Ms. Janot, Communities in Bloom, go ahead.
Okay, so again, through your worship, this next report is a bit on a lighter note regarding Communities in Bloom. Next slide, please. Well, no slides right now. Okay.
We can see your slides on our
there, okay.
devices, so go, fire away.
So North Grenville took part in Communities in Bloom at the provincial level for the first time in 2023. CIB is a volunteer and partnership-driven organization that uses competitive evaluation to foster community strength, involvement, and continuous improvement. Communities are evaluated on 6 categories, which are now on the screen. And across these categories, there are 3 different sectors, which are business, residential, and municipal. To take part, each community must create a community handbook, which is available online to all the public, and a tour of the community is created for judges. Communities that reach 5 blooms can move up to the national and international levels. Next slide, please. I'm happy to report that North Grenville received 3 out of 5 blooms. For our first year participating, this is a great achievement. I've listed the categories by how we ranked on the slide here, with tidiness being our highest scoring category and floral displays being our lowest. Next slide, please. The judges provided a number of recommendations that could help improve our community across these 6 categories. And in brief, there wasn't a full report attached to the agenda, but I'll just make some brief points here. So a goal towards focusing on horticulture, working with the BIA to improve tidiness, looking toward green initiatives such as more battery-powered equipment in our recreation department, and expanding our Christmas tree recycling program, invasive weed control and more tree planting events, more historical and cultural events, increasing trail signage, adding more maintained flower beds, and encouraging more volunteer involvement. It is the recommendation of staff that departments consider this feedback in their work plans moving forward. Any financial impacts to action the recommendations will be within budget allotments, and if additional funding is needed to support an initiative, staff will return to council for approval. Next slide, please. We'd be remiss if we didn't take some time to thank the many people who made this initiative happen, including our wonderful judges, Linda Robertson and Paul Ronan, and our tour hosts and profile book contributors, including the following. We invited them here tonight, but many were away for Christmas holidays, but I'd just like to list some of them here. So the staff at Ferguson Forest, Leela at the Kempville campus, Lorraine and Greg, who have been making Rotary Park and Canada Post beautiful by themselves, the Historical Society, Megan and Jax of Wilding Acres, Devin, who showed us her lavender farm, Kay Love, who showed us her garden, which is truly a labor of love, Carla at Saunders Country Critters, municipal staff, including senior managers and Jeff Buchanan, Dave and Rob at Rito Woodland Ramble, Parks Canada staff, Rick at Aquanel, the Hannahs, who have an absolutely beautiful private garden, and volunteers at the Giving Garden, and a special thanks to Diane Duford and Doreen Hill, who gave us some extra help. And as well to everyone who helps our community in bloom all on its own, including residents and businesses. Next slide, please. We look forward to taking on Communities Bloom again in 2024. Anyone who wants to get involved can reach out to us at the contact on the slide. We're hoping to create a Communities in Bloom team that can come and take on some new and exciting initiatives. And we're also happy to share that the color of the year is orange. So as you're planning your garden, think of throwing in some marigolds and dahlias. And yes, I had to Google what flowers were orange because I do not know how to green them. In conclusion, I ask that council receive the evaluation and direct staff to consider the judges' recommendations in their 2024 work plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciated. I know a lot of effort went into Communities in Bloom. It's an ambitious and comprehensive program and lots of work. So appreciate all who stepped up. Definitely a big preoccupation for the community this summer. Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Hillary, thank you for all the work that you did on this and engaging our municipality and our community. It was a quick task to have to get together and move it forward. I will say that I have been championed by Doreen Hill for many years to get on board with this. So I'm glad to see it happening. I will announce that the Barrows will be retiring from doing Rotary Park, and as you know, so we need many volunteers to keep things going the way, and I think we can do better, and I know we can do better through having a lot of volunteers and the awareness of beautification in our community. I want to point out through Councillor Strachan and the Environmental Action Committee, we now have the Habitat Gardens, which is a great addition to having to Communities in Bloom. They weren't existing when they went through. So anyways, thank you for that, and let's get our Communities in Bloom going.
Councillor Strachan?
I think definitely there's, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Wilson's point, there's a lot of things that are happening also on the campus that are changing that I think will show improvements year over year with the community garden as well as the another habitat garden of sorts there and so on. So there's lots of good initiatives. One of the ones that stood out here was the Christmas tree recycling program. Was the effort that's made by Facebook community group considered in the tree recycling? Because there's actually quite a few people who will insist on getting their trees for their goats, I believe, yes, that enjoy them, and whether or not that kind of participation at a community level is considered.
Through your worship, yeah, myself and CAO Dunlap actually talked about the tree recycling today. Perhaps the judges or we missed highlighting that we do have the drop-off program in Oxford Mills, but absolutely programs that are kind of resident-led. We're scouring Facebook. We're looking at the social media pages to see what community members are doing, and we're featuring that as well. So if there are any of those initiatives, people should feel free to send it our way as well.
I think pumpkins for pigs around Halloween is another one, so thank you.
So I'll recognize Councillor Wilson and then Deputy Mayor Barclay.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm over my 2-question quota. I'm up to 3. Was there, I didn't notice anything in the report regarding our, and no disrespect because of the Rideau Valley Conservation or South Nason Conservation. I know we can't do anything to our shorelines, but was there anything mentioned about cleaning up the shorelines regarding excessive weeds, that perhaps invasive weeds or extra trees that are there that are falling down and that sort of thing for cleanliness and tidying up? So just adding to that. Thanks.
Through your worship, there was some comments made about ways we could restore the shoreline and kind of reinforce it to make sure we're preserving it. So that was communicated as well to our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture. One of our judges is actually the Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture from the City of Toronto. So he had an extremely vast amount of knowledge and passed on a lot to that department.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Barclay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you to Ms. Chanel. The list of recommendations that they provided, is that basically a prescription to get an extra bloom, or are some of, can we prioritize these? How do we get one more bloom next year? Which recommendations would you recommend we focus on? Or
Through your worship, I wouldn't say that it's exactly a prescription. I can speak from my experience in Brockville. We got 5 blooms pretty quick in our adventure, but they didn't hire a horticulturist till this past year, right? So they recognize that communities have smaller budgets than others, so they don't necessarily expect you to do it all. I'd say to work towards the 4 blooms or hopefully even 5 blooms next year, getting that volunteer base really built up. They would love to see more of what the community is doing. As Councillor Strachan said, there are already so many great initiatives going on in the community, so we just need to showcase those. And I'd say working on some floral displays as well, and a lot of that can be volunteer driven to improve our score there, which was our lowest.
more? I didn't realize we had a quota, but anyways. The second question, would we, there's been a lot of discussion in the community about a tree canopy policy in the urban service area. Would that get us any further towards the goal of getting more blooms?
I definitely think the judges would look favorably on that. I know we had a dinner with senior managers, and that was discussed at the dinner about efforts that are being made and what has been done with regard to planning and bylaw as well.
Good. Well, certainly lots of engagement. I think as worthy as this list is, my only concern is, to your point, Deputy Mayor Barclay and Ms. Janot, things like horticultural's position are likely fairly premature at this stage. They come with significant financial implications, and I'm wondering if we can receive a report on any financial implications of implementation before proceeding with the program, so we have a better understanding of what the costing would be. As you say, a lot of this is volunteer driven, and we're so appreciative to have these amazing volunteers that step up in the way they do. But I'm curious to know how we phase in some of the recommendations that are highlighted here so that it's sustainable in the long run.
Through your worship, I would say to my comment in the financial section, so there wouldn't be any significant financial implications to implement any of these, and if there was, we would be reporting back to council if we were looking to implement a bigger initiative under Communities in Bloom. But right now, I think a lot of this can be accomplished within basically current budget allotments, as well as what we're looking at in the draft budget for 2024.
So the consideration of a horticulturist position, which appears as the #1 item on this list, I assume is not part of the 2024 budget.
No, so that list was just pulled from the report itself. It wasn't prioritized in any way. It was just, these are some recommendations. Doesn't mean they're actually all happening. As I said, we will only be actioning items that can be done within what is going to be allotted in the draft 2024
And the
budget.
Clean Sweep program in conjunction with the Old Town Kemple BIA, does that have budget implications?
No, so it's something that's very simple. We used to do it when I was at the BIA in Brockville. You basically just choose an hour, you meet weekly, and you go out and with some trash bags and clean up.
Okay. Okay, council, any other questions? I think what's of interest to me is if we're taking very seriously the the program of Community in Bloom for the long run, seeing what's low-hanging fruit, if you will, versus things that are more ambitious, kind of seeing a timeline for that and understanding where council is being asked to make a financial commitment versus leveraging existing opportunities would be very helpful. So perhaps you can provide additional information in the new year.
Absolutely, we will report back, and I think it'd be a good opportunity to raise the awareness again that we'll be looking for volunteers and anyone who wants to join or showcase what they're doing.
Great. So I think we're going to receive the report, colleagues, Communities in Bloom for 2023. Did the judges commit to coming back, or do we have to invite them to return to North Grenville under certain conditions? How does that work?
So we register to be part of the program, and so we invite the judges. They try not to send the same judges to the same community more than once. As Councillor Wilson mentioned, we do have a local resident who is a judge herself, so I don't think she'll ever judge our community because that wouldn't be fair, but so we do have some expertise in the community.
Okay.
Just quickly.
Yes, go ahead. I think I hear somebody. Go ahead.
I whispered through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Hillary.
Yes, go ahead.
What is the cost to enter Communities in Bloom? Is there a cost?
The registration fee for a community of our size is $400.
Okay, for the year?
Correct.
Okay, and plus wining and dining and touring them around?
Yes, we have to cover the costs of
Right.
hosting them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good stuff. So we'll look for a mover and a seconder, and that is that we receive the report, obviously. And I've just taken the liberty of maybe tweaking this recommendation a little bit. Direct staff to review and, of course, consider the recommendations from Communities in Bloom in future work plans, because I think we're looking at 2024 and beyond, and include any financial impacts for a phased approach in a forthcoming report. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Strachian, thank you. Councillor Wilson. And do you feel, Ms. Jeannot, that you could have a green thumb after all this work with Communities in Bloom? Is it like contagious?
It's definitely contagious. I'm trying to maintain the 40 lilac bushes that are at the house I purchased earlier this year, but
I
I
think
got
you
a lot
can
of
do it.
advice
All
from
right.
the judges.
Good. All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor, please? Good, thank you. All right, that one carries, and I think we're on to your last report.
Yep,
All right.
this is my last one. Maybe another exciting topic, the parking study. So I'll just wait for the slides to come up. Thank you. If you can move to the next slide. So the Downtown Kemptville Community Action Plan was completed in 2021, which recommended completing a downtown parking study. WSP was retained to do this work and conducted a parking inventory, a parking use analysis, and stakeholder engagement. This study was presented to council back in October and included 8 recommendations which council asked staff to prioritize and present back to council. Next slide, please. The recommendations are prioritized and scheduled as indicated on this slide, with developing a communications plan, addressing the library parking, and repurposing clothier spaces coming first and being addressed by the end of March 2024. Recommendations that have a longer horizon will still be considered as opportunities arise, but they may just take a little longer to accomplish this. So this doesn't mean we're waiting until later on to work on them, but just they will take a bit more time. Next slide, please. To assist with monitoring, we have created a dashboard, a public dashboard, and this will report on the progress of the recommendations. Staff will be using our strategic planning software Invisio, which includes a public dashboard that is open to residents. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. And as part of the study, we also created monitoring tools so we can track various metrics to see if downtown parking conditions are changing, and these metrics will be included in the dashboard. Next slide, please. So staff recommend accepting the recommendations as prioritized on the screen. That concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. Okay, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Strachian, and I'll put Deputy Mayor on the list, just for good measure. All right, Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Hillary. Quick question, when we say number 5, I know we had discussed it. Accessible or age-friendly parking spaces, and I reading in the report that there is possibly not room to do accessible parking spots in the downtown, that we would change that characterization to age-friendly parking spaces?
Through your worship. So that recommendation speaks to the two different types, right? So accessible spaces, as you mentioned, will be difficult due to jurisdiction and space requirements to install them in the downtown areas, particularly on street parking, which is the goal and what was recommended in the study. So we are leaving that option for age-friendly parking spaces, but as discussed at the last council meeting, accessible spaces wherever possible will be the
Wherever
priority.
possible. Yeah, when I saw it again, I thought we had crossed that bridge and tried to eliminate that age-friendly quota or quotation that, yeah, what is deemed age-friendly? Is it young children or like, yeah, I don't know.
So the study spoke to age-friendly as being seniors. That
Okay.
was the goal.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Continuing on from Councillor Wilson's point, I'd ask that the age-friendly consideration be removed. The Accessibility Advisory Committee was quite clear in their recommendation against using age-friendly, that it really didn't fit within the same context as accessibility, and that if we're going down this path, that it didn't really land in a place that they felt was appropriate, and that we should continue. So I think if we are to use the recommendation from our advisory committee, I would say that accessibility should be the focus, and that age-friendliness didn't really mean enough to warrant consideration. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Barclay.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Ms. Chanot. I'm going to push back a little bit on number 8. Actually, I'm going to push it up in terms of priority. And I'm going to suggest that we do away with the blanket parking ban during the winter season, and that we move towards a notification system where residents there's a temporary ban for snow clearing purposes. I think you'll find a lot of compliance if people get an email or a notice to take their cars off the street because of a weather event. And this would now enable, during the daytime hours to clear certain roads. I'm going to suggest that that's where we want to move on that one issue of on-street parking. So do away with the blanket ban and move towards some sort of notification system, asking people to remove their cars during a weather event.
Okay, so you're looking for number 8 to move up
Yeah, I would
to
say
under number,
the first 3 or 4,
Okay.
I
Top
have
4.
no problem with in terms of priority, but I'd like to move consideration of notification of a parking ban.
okay. So then why don't we make it part of that top 4? There's a comms plan, reserved library parking, repurposed parking spaces on Clothier Street, which I think are fairly easily done. So we can put it in that top 4 if that
Yeah,
works.
I'd like
Council
it looked at.
Yeah, okay. And Ms. Janot, I don't remember, the limited overnight on-street winter parking was that, right? It was to introduce that concept that there could be a system by which some people can park their cars on their streets overnight.
Correct, and that was mainly for residents who live in the downtown core.
Right.
And we also took council's recommendation to include the idea of looking at 15-minute parking spaces as well as parking spaces at the Legion as well for overnight.
Right.
So that'll all be included in there as well.
Okay, excellent. And currently, the limited overnight on-street winter parking was 2025? In terms of the timeline for?
To be complete by the end of 2025, like we were still going to work on it, but
Yes.
it just may take a little more time than some of the ones in the top.
Right, the top 3. Okay. Okay, so we have direction on that. Is there anything else, colleagues, in regards to this list? Not seeing any, then our resolution or a motion for consideration is that council accept the prioritized parking study with the adjustment that we move number 8 to number 5, and direct staff to also report back annually on progress. Yes.
Madam Mayor, can we consider the removal of age-friendly as well?
Oh, I apologize,
please?
absolutely.
Thank you.
So what I'm hearing, Councillor Strachan, is that the Accessibility Advisory Committee really wanted that emphasis on accessible.
And that age-friendly wasn't.
Okay. And that age-friendly wasn't an accommodation at the present time. They wanted to pursue. Okay. Okay, so we'll capture that as well. And with that in mind, can I look for a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Barclay, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Any last comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Okay, thank you. I know there's a lot of work in those 3 reports, Ms. Jeannot. Thank you very much for your time and energy. All right, moving on. I am looking at the access agreement for Scotchline Road. Ms. Martin has been waiting patiently. I believe we're nearing the end of our meeting. Colleagues, so over to you, Ms. Martin, for one of our final substantial reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the municipality received a request from 2 property owners who own lands on the unmaintained portion of Scotchline Road to construct an access laneway and driveway. So the length of the access laneway and driveway would be approximately 900 meters from the maintained portion of Scotchline Road East. Next slide, please. So the individuals entering into the agreement are required to maintain insurance for the duration of the use of the access, and the individuals entering into the agreement will be responsible for all the costs associated with establishing the laneway driveway and maintaining it. If we go to the next slide, please. I did include a map just showing you the area that the 2 individuals are looking to establish that laneway driveway over that's the unmaintained portion of Scotchline Road. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight to council that our zoning bylaw does permit limited development on properties without frontage on an open and maintained road. Typically, this is for agricultural structures or for recreational uses such as hunting camps. I want to note that a zoning bylaw amendment would be required if a proposed development requires frontage on an open and maintained roadway. So say an individual wanted to establish a use that wasn't permitted without frontage on an open and maintained road, that individual would either have to construct the road to provide frontage or come to council to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to allow for that development to occur without proper frontage. Next slide, please. So it's staff recommendation that council authorizes the director of planning, being myself, to enter into an access agreement to permit the construction of the laneway driveway on a portion of the unmaintained road allowance for Scotchline Road.
Thank you. All right, questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Martin. Is this is 2 residents that want to make a driveway?
That's correct.
Okay. And will the driveway connect both homes, or is it?
There are no homes on the property. It's to provide access to their lands. They just want to upgrade a portion of the unopened road allowance to create a better driving surface to get in and out of their property.
Okay, and they're doing this together in an agreement?
Yes.
So then, if either one sells the property, how does that work?
That's through your worship to Councillor Wilson. That's a great question. So it's the individuals have come to an understanding as to how they're going to share for the maintenance, the construction and the maintenance cost of this driveway. That would be, in my opinion, a civil matter between the 2 of them, as they've come to an agreement as to how that is to be worked out. The permission that they're seeking from the municipality is just to establish it. And so those requirements within the agreement would stipulate what they'd have to provide from an insurance perspective, as well as if that access is revoked, they would have to revert that unopened road allowance portion back to its original state.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Good to see neighbors working together. That's always a nice thing. Hopefully it can carry on for the next few years, if not decades. So the recommendation is, I've just lost it, apologize, that we receive Ms. Martin's report and that we authorize the Director of Planning or their designate to enter into an access agreement for a portion of Scotchline Road. As Ms. Martin has highlighted, looking for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Barclay, thank you. Any final comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Apologies. Finally, we're moving to the item that was removed from consent, and that was the recommendation from the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Municipal Advisory Committee that council set aside $15,000 to support cultural and heritage events, and I believe that was for the year 2024. And I can certainly say, as co-chair of that committee, there's been some fantastic discussion about how to amplify the voices and the presence of members of our community who may not be part of the dominant culture or have unique cultural backgrounds and heritage. And the committee is certainly, I think, looking for opportunities to create spaces and opportunities for people to come together over food, music, other cultural traditions that would allow residents in North Grenville to get to know the diversity of this community. So that, I think, was the spirit in which that $15,000 recommendation was made. And having sat on the Health, Wellness, and Recreation Committee, where we organized recreational expos and many other things, I think it would make sense so that the committee would make a recommendation like this to enable certain efforts and initiatives for 2024. Councillor Strachan, I don't know if you want to add anything in regards to context?
No, I think the Arts and Culture Committee set the stage for their proposal for funding for arts and culture, and I think it allowed this conversation to be extended to heritage and other cultural events. And yeah, I think there's some excitement generated from the possibilities.
But to be clear, it's not a granting program. It would be a fund that would be used to support certain events for which food, music, and other elements would be beneficial and offer enjoyment and opportunities for learning and information sharing among residents. Does that give you what you need, Deputy Mayor? I think you
Yeah,
removed
no,
it from the agenda.
it's all information that was lacking in this, and as Councillor Strachan mentioned, we went through a similar process with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee. We did take time to develop a policy around the fund, and I'm just wondering whether the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee has gone through that same process of talking a bit more about the policy around who receives the funds, how they solicit those funds, and how they're dispersed.
Again, I don't think it would work as a granting program to particular organizations. I think, from my recollection, it was more to support the convening of certain events for which there would be expenses, whether it's using space, providing food, contracting musicians, what have you. So I think that's the spirit. It's not an allocation to disperse dollars outwards, but to support the convening of certain events. That's how I understood it. That being said, this was a recommendation that I think the EDI committee wanted to get before us as we go into our budget deliberations, and I'm sure there will be more discussion about how to make those decisions about which events, how, timing, limits for those events so that more than one are enabled. So I expect more detail will be forthcoming at the committee.
So is this intended to be an annual grant, like $15,000 per annum going forward? Or?
I think this is the first effort by the EDI committee, and particularly its members, to see what can be accomplished or achieved through this allocation. And I'm sure that this time next year, reflections on whether it was too much or enough or requires more will be brought to our attention at that time.
So it's not a request for annual funding?
I think at this stage, it would be premature to say it's annual. I expect, though, members of the committee would be supportive, but I think they want to use this year to see if it's the best way to use the resources that are being requested. Is that fair? Yeah, okay. Okay, so with that, I think at this stage, council is being asked to support the request, but obviously the ratification of that, I think, amount would come through our budget process. So I think we are tonight just asking staff to capture it in the relevant budget line for the cultural and heritage events funding. So can I look to a council colleague, Strachan, Deputy Mayor, to move and second that request? So I will call the vote. All in favor, please. Good, thank you. That is carried. And I believe with that, we are on to other business for which I believe there is none. Is that right? No. Ms. Preston, excellent. Notice of motions. Do we have notice of motions this evening? Not seeing anything from council, introduction and consideration of bylaws. I believe we have already addressed those. Remaining questions from members of the public and/or members of the media? No, except for our AV crew and Terry Lynn. Oh, and of course, our regular attendees, welcome. I do not believe there are questions. Any questions? No? Okay, we're good. Then we'll go to close the meeting, and that is confirmation bylaw, that bylaw 1/2023, to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on December 5th, 2023, be adopted as passed. Mover and seconder, please. Wilson, Barclay, thank you. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And before I motion to adjourn, I would like to say that tomorrow morning in Brockville at County Council, the award of the tender for County Road 43 is coming, a long-awaited 5-year journey, and the lowest bid was from Tomlinson at just under $40 million. So I am optimistic that this time tomorrow I can sleep better at night knowing that tender has been awarded and work will get underway. So cross our fingers, council colleagues, that tomorrow morning's discussions are fruitful. And with that, I will ask someone to move to adjourn, please. Councilor Starkey and Councilor Wilson. We are adjourning at 7:57. Thank you for your time. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.